What's good, everybody? It's your boy D Nice with I2G Radio, back at it with our Las Vegas Raiders edition of our podcast. Urge everyone like, comment, and subscribe to I2G Radio, letter I, number 2, letter G Radio. We are on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify, and you can also check us out on our YouTube channel, Viva Las Raiders. Word Viva, second word Las, L-A-S, third word Raiders with an S. Let's get right into it. So, those of you who've been following along with the podcast here the last month or two, we have been covering potential free agents that may sign to the Las Vegas Raiders. Last pod was about DJ Reader, and I first want to stop and give everyone a big shout out and appreciate everybody that has been checking out the pods on the YouTube channel. Our Quiddy Pay podcast that we did about almost 3 weeks ago. It was during 1,000 views, so much love and appreciate everyone that's been checking it out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube, or on the site as well. So just wanted to give everyone a shout out for that. But today, I wanted to talk about possibility of a free agent that's out there. I'm surprised he actually is still out there. Wide receiver Jauan Jennings, that played last year for the San Francisco 49ers. 6'3", 212 pounds, from Tennessee. I was round 7, pick 217 by San Francisco in the 2020 draft. Had 55 receptions last year, 643 yards, 9 touchdowns. I really feel like if the Raiders are looking to still get a veteran wide receiver, I think this guy would fit the bill. He's got the height, got the size, kind of reminds me a little bit of Jacoby Myers. But that team as a whole, offense and defense for the 49ers, was just riddled with injuries. He missed some time as well during the season, but was for the most part, the most consistent wide receiver for the 49ers last year. I think would be great in the blocking game, especially in this Clint Kubiak offense. Again, when we did a pod on Dante Thornton Jr., I think as he evolves, now going into his second year, improving his route tree, improving his catches, he is the X factor. Because really, if you get a big year from Dante Thornton, you don't really need another wide receiver. If Jack Besh is playing well, Jalen Naylor's playing well, Trey Tucker, you've got a very diverse wide receiver room there with Dante Thornton. That's 4 wide receivers. Jennings would be 5. I kind of like the wide receiver room to kind of look similar to that. Guys, you've got guys in the red zone. Jauan Jennings is great in the red zone, that can get you that touchdown in that area that the Raiders have been really bad in for decades, not just the last couple of years. But it diversifies your wide receiver room with a veteran like Jauan Jennings, because I think there's going to be a similar type of player that the Raiders target in the draft if they do not sign a guy like a Jauan Jennings or possibly Stephon Diggs. I'm not big on Stephon Diggs, but, kind of that veteran number 1 wide receiver. Similar game to me, kind of reminds me of Jacoby Myers. Also has a little bit of Michael Crabtree with him, and for diehard Raider fans, a 15 does remind me of Michael Crabtree, who was one of DC's favorite targets in 2016 and 2017, especially in that red zone. Jauan Jennings can definitely fit that bill for the Raiders if the Raiders decided they wanted to sign him. It could also would allow you to go a different direction in the draft if you want to go with kind of more of a speedy slot receiver like a Zachariah Branch from Georgia, or a Concepcion from Texas A&M. If these receivers do start to fall a little bit, this possibly, depending on what type of deal you're giving Jauan Jennings, gives you the option to kind of diversify even more that receiving room. If you want to add another slot receiver, you can. If you want to go a different direction and go a big body wide receiver, as a rookie, you can kind of develop him a little bit slower if you bring in a Jauan Jennings. But the main reason that Jauan Jennings is still available is price. One of Brock Purdy's favorite targets, again in San Francisco, he was looking at making that, low 20 mil a year range in free agency. And for every day that he's not signed, it's going to be tougher and tougher for him to get that type of a deal. Now, if you would like to take a prove-it deal, in the 8 to 10 million range with the Las Vegas Raiders, I'd be ecstatic. If you want to do an option for a second year, then you kind of have a little bit more leeway to see how, again, Dante Thornton is developing, because, when it's all said and done, you want to have your drafted players, previously drafted players, rise and ascend into those, on the offensive side, your number one, your number two wide receiver. Jack Best, you're hoping going into year two can develop into your wide receiver two, and you would love to develop your wide receiver one. Again, possibly Dante Thornton, or you see if Trey Tucker, can take that leap again now with a mastermind as offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak. That's still yet to be seen. But if you don't feel that you have that dominant X wide receiver, or kind of a JSN type, or a Puka Nacua, which is kind of a guy where you can kind of move as a chess piece all over the board. Jauan Jennings is a nice kind of stopgap while you try to develop that wide receiver. Or you're going to have to pay, probably go a little bit higher in the draft, probably the second round, if you really want to see it, possibly like a Denzel Boston does fall. Now, if that's the route that the Raiders are going, you may not want to go the Jennings route. That might be a little too expensive, especially on a one-year deal. But if you really feel that this team needs that veteran presence, Jauan Jennings, I think, fits the bill. Like I said, red zone threat. He kind of gives me Crabtree, Jacoby Myers vibes, but a great blocker, and would definitely fit in the scheme with Kubiak. I think even Kubiak was on the 49ers staff when Jennings was there as well. So there's some familiarity there with the wide receiver and the coach. But again, really just depends on price. Again, for every day that's going past that he's not signed, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Now, you may feel, post June 1st, there might be a team that, has some injuries, or, something comes up, and they're in a fix and they need a wide receiver. It may be to Jennings to kind of play the waiting game and see if he can still cash out and get a big payday from a team. But again, I would love to see him here on a prove-it deal in the 8 to 10 million range. Nothing that's too crazy or breaks the bank. Then if you still want to draft your guy, a big X wide receiver in the draft, you can even go a little bit more in the third or fourth round, in the later rounds, and see what you can find there. I'm definitely going to be doing a mock draft here sometime, I would say between Tuesday and Wednesday, and we'll do a pod on it. Just some guys that I'm looking at or would like to see the Raiders target. But kind of surprised, again, that he's still is a free agent, still out there. I don't think he'll be there past June, to be perfectly honest with you, but definitely an option for the Raiders that can be, again, in that 8 to 10 range, possibly a prove-it deal, and kind of give you a little bit more time as you want to develop out your receiving room. The site, www.illuminati2g.com, for all your hip-hop news and updates. Also, Raiders news and updates here. I2G Radio, letter I, number 2, letter G, radio. That is on Apple Podcast and on Spotify. Viva Las Raiders. Like, comment, subscribe there as well for all my folks that get their media and listen to their podcasts on YouTube. Viva Las Raiders. Word Viva, word Las, Raiders with an S. D Nice, I2G Radio, signing off. be doing another one coming up here. We'll be on wide receiver Stephon Diggs. I'm not a guy that I'm looking for the Raiders to sign, but definitely got to talk about it. Peace.